He handed George the room key and showed us where the room was located on a room map. We saw that there was a utility room about 50 feet away. George asked for a key to it, which Kevin immediately printed out for him. Last, Kevin called Perez's room to make sure that he wasn't there. He did not get an answer. We thanked Kevin and drove the van over near the room. George knocked on the door a couple of times and then let us in with the key. It was deserted. I stopped, suddenly staring at the bed where my wife had spread her legs for another man. After a while, I turned and started helping. In less than 2 hours, the equipment was installed and tested. As we were leaving, I noticed a laptop docking station on the table. "Look, George, he must use his laptop in here." I practically shouted. "If I can get in here while it is here and he is not, I can install the key logger on it." George said, "Maybe he leaves it here when he goes to lunch or dinner." "I'll wait outside every day if I need to," I responded. "First, I want to get a GPS on his car so that we don't get surprised." "Don't jump the gun," he answered. "Understand. I don't want to risk up payback. Let's get out of here. I'll buy lunch. How about across the parking lot? Their food is pretty good. Oh, and they have a new barmaid. She is pretty and easy to talk to." "Sounds good. I'm hungry," George noted. The bar was deserted when we walked inside of it. I entered first. Mary saw me, smiled, and waved. Then George stepped in behind me. Mary's face changed to one of shock. She dropped the towel that she was using to clean the bar and immediately walked over to us. Ignoring me, she grabbed George in a full-body hug, saying, "George, it is so good to see you again." He hugged her back warmly and said, "Mary, I have wondered. Looks like you are back on your feet. I am so glad." She pulled back, still holding him, and said, "No, I'm not there yet, but I am getting closer. Thanks to you." From the sidelines, I said, Mary, I'd like you to meet my good friend, George." They both laughed. Mary released George and put both of her hands on my hand, saying, "I've liked you from when we first met. Now that I know that you are George's friend, well, that matters a lot." I smiled and said, "He's a butthole in general, but he's okay." She grinned and said, "George and I go back a couple of years, but I've never thought of him as a butthole. Must be a guy thing." Mary kept taking care of drink orders for the 4 other patrons, but always came back to talk to us when done. Among other things, I learned that she was working as much as possible to save money to be able to enter nursing school in about 5 months. Around 2 in the afternoon, George and I were the only customers left. I commented on that, and Mary said that it was always deserted in the afternoons. She added, "I don't make any tip money, which sucks, but I usually use the time to study." Then, grinning at us, she concluded, "But it's a lot nicer talking with you guys." The 3 of us chatted about another half hour when suddenly Mary, looking rather solemn, turned to George and said, "George, I am going to tell him." George just returned her gaze and made a slow nod. She turned to me and said, "If we are going to be friends, I don't want any secrets. And maybe, when I tell you, you might not want to think of me as my friend. I'll understand, but I won't hide my life from you. And I don't want you to find out from someone else." I saw her reach for George's hand. She clasped it hard and said, "Let me tell you how I met George. The bastard arrested me. He took me to a filthy holding cell in some cold dungeon he has on that base. I broke down when I saw the cell. It didn't matter to him. He just pushed me in and began closing the door. Then he stopped and watched me cry. He started yelling at me, telling me how I was ruining my life and how stupid I was being. Suddenly, I realized he wasn't yelling that I was a useless crack-ass, which is what I was. He was telling me that I was hurting myself. Nobody ever said that to me before, but I heard him then, and I lost it. I collapsed on that horrible dirty mattress and bawled like a kid. George sat down next to me and uttered one word. She looked at me with tears in her eyes and said, "He asked me, why?" Nothing more. Looking at George, she continued, "For the first and only time in my life, I spilled my guts, crying, hysterical at times. I told him everything. I don't know how long it took. It must have been hours that George sat there with me. When I was finally done, he just stared at me for the longest time. Then he got up, softly squeezed my shoulder, and then locked me in that cell. He left me there for 14 hours. I didn't see anybody, didn't hear anything. I was cold and hungry the entire time, coming down off a crack high. Finally, he returned and told me that it was time to see the judge. Normally, you get a chance to clean up and put on a fresh jail suit before you appear in court. Not me. He made me go in there as I was. The defense attorney didn't say anything. The judge was about to sentence me to jail when suddenly George stood up and asked to address the court. I'll never, ever forget what he said, or what he looked like in his full dress uniform. I can quote him verbatim to this day, but what matters is that he told the judge that justice would not be served if he remanded me to jail. He wanted me in rehab. The judge and the attorney looked shocked, with reason. I was an addict, a W, and a 3-time loser who was obviously guilty of the crimes that George had charged me. And suddenly hard-ass George was on my side? After some hesitation, the judge gave me a chance at a 90-day rehab with 4 years of hard time if I screwed up. I jumped on it. Looking back to George, she said, I haven't touched it since the day that George busted me. Stepping back and looking at both of us, she added softly, George, David, I don't walk the streets now, but I am still a W. It is the only way that I can save money for school and provide for my daughter, but if you two don't want to talk to me anymore, I understand. I am sorry, George. She found herself being hugged from both sides. George said, as long as you keep fighting, I'm in your corner. And you will make it, I know you. I added, Mary, I am glad we met and happy to think of you as my friend. It was a good thing that the bar was deserted and we were in a dark corner. Mary just held us and cried. Monday evening, Marge got in around 5:30 and had Chinese dinner in her hands. She came over to kiss me, but I just grabbed the bags and took them to the counter, while saying, Great, we are all starved. When I turned around, she was looking at me with a pensive expression. I said, Why don't you change clothes in the bathroom while I get things ready? Her face paled as I turned away and started to get dishes out of the cabinet. Whatever she was going to say sputtered out into silence. I was still furious over her lie last night. Dinner was a quiet affair, and the kids noticed but didn't say anything. Marge wasn't too hungry, but I made a point of eating a lot. Marge did make several attempts at conversation, which I mostly ignored. Then I realized that I was being stupid and was tipping my hand. While last night's S was just average for me, I had made it extra good for her, and she was probably still feeling good about it. My being in a hole now was just cheap, and I didn't want her to call off the affair before I had evidence. I made a point of shaking my head and said, Sorry everyone, I've been distracted about a work problem, and I brought my troubles home. Let's start over. How was everyone's day? We chatted through dinner with the semblance of normality. I made it a point to smile at Marge a couple of times and to be attentive to her. Marge went to bed ahead of me. I pushed the thermostat up about 5 degrees. After waiting an hour, I checked the voice recorders, but again got nothing of interest. I walked into our bedroom. It must have been 77 degrees. I got ready for bed, got in, and rolled away from her without saying anything. She quietly said, Night, honey. Without rolling over, I said, Why are you wearing that flannel top? It's certainly not cold in here. She was silent a moment and then said, Honey, I'm just cold. That's all. I decided to push it. I rolled over to her and embraced her. She hugged me back. She felt really sweaty. Are you feeling sick? I asked with concern. She said, I don't think so. I've just been cold at night lately. I pushed my hand up to her unmarked tit and, while fondling it, said, I know a few ways to warm you up. She stiffened, sighed, and said, David, I am sorry. I'm just too tired. I rolled away and said, It's okay. Marge moved to me and spooned me, saying, Honey, yesterday was just incredibly wonderful, but I'm just too tired tonight. Tell you what, Wednesday I have an easy day. I'll rock your off Wednesday night. I just murmured, It's okay. After some seconds, she pulled away and went back to her side of the bed. Things were cold Tuesday morning. I left at the normal time and drove to work. George called to let me know that he installed the GPS on Perez's car last night and gave me the website and login information. I checked out the site. It showed me that D-Head was across town. Deciding that it was time to check the bedroom voice recorder, I let the office know that I would be back in a couple of hours and drove home. Marge had gotten a call from her best friend, Ashley, Monday morning. Almost immediately, Marge told her that she had had incredible S this weekend. Ashley squealed, UFL this weekend? So, Ashley knows. I wondered if her husband Mike knew and didn't tell me, the bastard. No, David. It was Sunday night. I wanted to F him Saturday night like usual, but he spent all day working outside and was too tired, Marge replied. She went on, but Sunday night was awesome. I had 6 and 7 little shivering ones. It was absolutely the best I have had in years. Ashley said, 13 times? I've never even come close to that. What made it different than usual? Ashley asked. She thought a moment. I don't really know. We didn't do anything new or different. Other than David gave me a great massage and he used his fingers a bit more. But maybe I was real horny. I don't know. Everything he did just set me off more. His touch was perfect. Always the right speed, the right softness or firmness. Just perfect. Ashley said, wow. She continued, then when he started F me, David just did everything I needed at exactly the right time. Better than a will? Ashley shot back at her. Oh yes. Making love with David is always better. This time was super better, Marge replied. Then why are you F Will? She asked with a smile in her voice. It's different, Marge replied. David makes love to me. I feel so safe with him. Well, just F me. It feels good, but I'd never want David to just use me like that. But both are good. I know that doesn't make any sense, does it? It does to me, girlfriend. It's the thrill, the raw passion. Oh, I know. That's why I started F Brian Sears last year. Then she giggled. Plus he has that horse C. Marge giggled back. And yeah, that's why you stopped F him. Then Ashley added, hey, next month, Mike will be out of town for 5 days. I think I am going to let Brian F me on the first day. Really? Damn. I thought you were done with him. I am, since last year. I thought that Mike was getting suspicious, but Brian and I keep in touch. With Mike away for 5 days, I thought I would indulge myself. You will tell me all about it, Marge ordered. Ashley countered with, only if you tell me all about Wednesday with Will and David, including all the dirty details. Marge said, deal.